Welcome to our webinar today about how to create a photo-based map in a snap using Esri Snap to Map app. My name is Shane Bradt. I work for UNH Cooperative Extension, and I am also part of the e-extension group called Map Assist, which is a focus group on geospatial technologies, and I'm part of something called the Mapping Innovation Hub, which you all will receive information about once the website is ready. But the point of this webinar is to follow on some of the things that we've already done. We've hosted 3 other webinars this spring, and those were in January, February, and then one just last week. And they were really looking at this progression of why would you use maps to engage your audience, how do you use ArcGIS Online, and what are story maps and how you might use them. So we're not going to go over that information. This is just focused on how do you use this specific app. But when I send you the links to the content relevant to this webinar, I'll also send you the links to those previous webinars, or if you notice the link on the bottom of the page there, that will direct you to this blog post, which has links to all 4 webinars. And the reason that we're here today is to talk about how do you make story maps with your phone. Now, there's a lot of compelling reasons about why people like maps. There's a lot of compelling reasons about why people like online maps. But one of the ideas which have surfaced recently, which are not just an idea from Esri, but something that Esri does fairly well, is this idea of a story map. So what is your story? How can you use an interactive online manner to show it? How can you use maps in that way? Sometimes there's not a whole lot of maps. The idea is that there is a better way to tell stories than simply just putting a map or an image in front of somebody. Now, in our previous webinar on story maps, we talked about all the different types of story maps that are out there. But today with this Snap to Map app, I'm just going to focus on one specific type, which is the map tour type of story map. In some ways, this is different than the others in that it's very specific in looking at if you have geotag photos, how do you display them? There are ways to do things like that in some or all of these other maps, but this one is very tailored for that specific use. So what would this type of story map look like? Here's a good example from Delaware State University campus tour. And what you can see is that you have a series of thumbtacks or points here that you can click on. When you click on these points, the bottom image will scroll over to whichever image is appropriate. This part up here will change to show the information, both an image and also some text and a name. You can scroll around the map, or you can scroll around and click on these images, and everything will change accordingly. Now, one of the things you might think when people first get involved in GIS and GPS and mapping is that they want to go out and do something, when often most of their activities look something like this. A bunch of people crowded around a computer, not necessarily going outside and seeing what's happening. So the question is this the only way to create story maps? Now, it is a way to create story maps, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to create a story map when you were right there out in the field using your mobile device instead of just being behind the computer? So, in fact, there is an app that was developed by Esri specifically for using mobile phones to create story maps, this type of story map. And you can see that it's available on Android and iOS, and of course it's free. But it's not necessarily free to use Snap to Map to make story maps. Now, if you go to sign in to any Esri product online, including if you go to sign into this My Stories section, Story Maps, you see that there are really 2 different kinds of accounts that you can have. A free non-commercial public account, and what it says, a free trial ArcGIS subscription. So an ArcGIS subscription or an organizational account. Now, story maps in general, including this type of story map, if you make it on your computer, you can use the free non-commercial public account. However, if you are going to use this app, you need to have an organizational account. And we talked in the previous webinars about the costs involved and Sometimes it can be fairly small, sometimes it can be fairly significant. Keep in mind that you may already have an organizational account if you're part of an institution that has ArcGIS. If you're paying maintenance, you may have an organizational account or can get one. For example, if you're in a school in the United States, you can get an organizational account for free. There are other home use organizational accounts. There's a variety of things that you can do, but just know in order to have a story map designed right on your phone, you're going to need an organizational account. So what I'm going to do is step you through how you use Snap to Map on this PowerPoint, and then we're going to look a little bit on how you can do something live on the phone, and we'll look at what the results are of those in the Maps Online on my computer. So before we get started, are there any questions? Again, if you have questions, you can type them into the chat or the questions section. Okay. So when you first start up Snap to Map, this is what it looks like on your phone. And I will admit that these screen captures were taken on iOS. So it's possible that the Android version does look a little bit different. I don't have an Android device to try it on, but I understand it's fairly similar. Of course, right here it tells you have to have an organizational ID. And the other thing it says is you have to have certain levels of privilege. When you get an organizational account, there are various things that certain users can be let do and blocked from doing. So in this case, you do have to be either the administrator or they have to have given you publisher privileges in order for you to use this. So all you would have to do is ask for that level of privileges in your account. So once you sign into it, using your username and password, you're then brought to this screen here. And you have a couple of different options. One, you can see the story maps that you've already built on your phone, but you haven't published yet. Or you can create a new story map. Keep in mind, once you publish a story map online, it leaves your phone and you can no longer edit it on your phone. So these are story maps that you can deal with on your phone. So to start a new story map, we're going to click here on Create New Story Map. And there's three different choices that you have. One will be a name of the map. Two will be a description of the map. And three will be the type of background you want for the map. Now, you can change these once this map's been published online, but these are just the starting points you have to choose. When you're done with these, you click on the Next button, and it brings you to this section where you're going to have two options. One, you can choose an existing photo, so a photo that's already been taken on your device you can use, or you can take a photo right at that moment. And I imagine that most people, when they're building them in the field, will choose that option to take the photo right at that moment. So you click on the Take Photo button, you're brought to a camera app where you click on the button, however your phone normally takes pictures, that is how it'll work. And then you get to either choose, you see on the lower left, to retake if you don't like that picture, or if you're happy with it, you click on Use Photo. That will bring you to the next section where they call you're editing that slide. So imagine that for each photo that you take, if you remember what that map tour looked like, there was an image on the right and had a name for the image and it had a description. So that's what you get to type in here. So I chose yellow bike rack, one of the many artsy bike racks on campus, and I chose to use a red pin, which is the default. Now, if you look down at the bottom here, you can see you can move to refine the position. So if for some reason you think that the pin wasn't in the right place, right there in the field you have the option to try to move that around in order to put the pin in the correct location. You can see that by using the gray background, I haven't really given myself a lot of choice to see if the pin is in the right place. Probably better to use some sort of image so you have a better chance to know how close to the actual object your pin was located. So when you're done with that, you simply click on Done, and you come back to this page. Now, you can see one picture I have just finished, one quote-unquote slide. I have another picture down below, which was a practice. And the mistake that a lot of people make at this point is click done, because done really means that you're done building this map. Instead, what you want to do is you want to click on this add more button, which will bring you back to this section, which will either allow you again to take a photo or to choose an existing photo on your phone. So we're going to go and take another photo. We click on take photo. I took another picture, call this a weepy tree, and I chose, since it was a tree, we're going to have a green pin. And when I'm done at adding those, I click done. And it starts to build these slides. You can scroll up and down. It has the most, it keeps the older slides on the top. So sometimes you forget that there are slides down below. So be sure to swipe down so that you can see as they stack up below. And if you want to get rid of any slide, for example, that extra picture that I put in by accident, you can go to that picture and swipe to the left, and you get this delete photo button, which will let you delete that photo. So you can keep going, walking around wherever you'd like to document with the same approach. Click add more, the add more button to flip back to take a picture, fill in the name and the description, click done, then go to add more. So as you're building this, you might have 2 pictures, you could have 10, you could have 50 pictures. Whenever you are done dealing with that map, you can click on the done button. Now this will give you 3 options. 1, discard and return home means throw out everything that I've done. Most likely you're not going to choose that one. Number 2, save changes to draft. So if you click Save Changes to Draft, this means, you know what, I'd like it to be kept on the phone. I'm not done with it yet. I'd like to come back and work on it at another time. Now notice if you see that the draft section is highlighted and we click on the right to go to Published, that there's nothing there. This one has not been published. It's only on our phone. Now, when you're ready to publish it, that means you're done with your map, and you'd like it to be moved to online and made available for people, you click on this Publish and Share dialog box. And the phone goes through the process of creating the story map, moving the data up. Now keep in mind, if you have lots of pictures, you're probably going to want to do this over Wi-Fi, although you don't have to necessarily. Just know that it's going to use your data plan to move the map information, but also, more importantly, move the pictures up to the cloud. So when you're done, that's it. You can tweet it, Facebook it, you can click that link and follow it, and you can also see the way that the permissions were set, which is important. In order to let people see it, it needs to be made public. And so that's it. If you click on the home button, you go back to the beginning, and you can build numerous maps. You can have some in draft, many in draft, but once you're done with them, you want to get them up to Esri's cloud. You push that publish option and it moves them up. So when you go back and you log into your ArcGIS Online account, this is the map that was built for you, ready to go. Now it could very well be that the map is done the way it is and you don't need to do any more. It could also be that this is a starting point and you'd like to add more information. Maybe you'd like to correct where the pins are. You have lots of capabilities, of course, and then continue to edit and build the map from there. So before we go any further, does anyone have any questions? I'm going to go look at this map and also show you how, by looking on the phone, this all looks and works. Okay, we'll go ahead. Go over to here. So in the Story Map webinar, we looked at the My Stories side, which we'll look at in a bit. But for this one, I'm going to start by looking at the ArcGIS Online side. So if you've logged into your ArcGIS Online account and you go to My Content, this is what you'll see. They've created Snap to Map. Automatically creates a folder. You don't have to do this. It creates a folder called Snap to Map. And then you have 3 different things. You have a web map, a feature layer, and another map, which you don't have to worry about. Try to do one quick thing here. So to view this, we're going to go here and then click on View Application. That should open up our map that we just created. It's already open. So here is the map. You see you can click through here to look at the different pictures that were taken. You have down here the little information about the name. Ooh, you can see I even made a misspelling. It's supposed to be University of New Hampshire. You can click through them by clicking on these arrows here. You can move around the map and click on the individual pins to bring up the different objects, or you can click down here to move through the different images. This may be good enough for what you want. You could just go ahead and send this to people. You may want to go ahead and do some construction, change some things, fix the spelling of New Hampshire, for example. And you can do that by clicking up here on this switch to builder mode. Which will now give you the tools that you need to do some editing. So you can see that the buttons are fairly clear here. If you want to change the name or the text, you can click up there. You can even change the picture or the thumbnail. We're going to go ahead and scroll over to the University of New Hampshire. Just going to click down here, change that to an S, and click off of it. And notice that it reminds you, oops, little button or a dialog box came up here. It says you haven't saved those yet. Be sure to save. So I'll click on Save. The other thing you could do is you could go ahead and drag around where these pins are located. If you think there's a mistake, you could change the base map. So for example, I'm going to choose imagery. You could also organize. So if you wanted to drag this campus map to be the first one, and maybe Thompson Hall to be the second, and then Taylor Hall to be the third. Click on Apply, and it reorders them. So again, it displayed them at first in the order I took them, but if there was another way you wanted to display them, you could do that. You could also add a new one if you wanted to here, if there was a point that you had, an image you wanted to put in. And if you click up here where it says Settings, you see you can do some other things. So for example, this one has the picture embedded here. But if you choose this one, it'll have the picture floating. We'll see what that looks like in a moment. You can change colors with the header if you wanted your own story map, text, links. If you wanted it to be zoomed in and out to a different place, whenever you're done, you click Apply. I'm going to click Save. And then it builds the map and reorganizes the map based on whatever you've chose it to show. So again, may it be done? It may be done when it comes off the phone, but if not, you can come back over here and edit away. So I'm going to show you how the app actually works by taking some pictures I've already taken and making a new map with it on my phone. But before I go any further, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so why don't we just go over here. I'm going to go back into my content. I'm going to delete all of that. And I'm now going to switch over to my phone. Actually, hold on one moment. So this is the Snap to Map app running on my phone. And what I'm going to do is just quickly create a new story map based on pictures that I took just using my normal camera app on my phone. Now keep in mind, in order for this to work really well, you're going to have the geotagging enabled. There's lots of different ways to set that up depending on your phone and your operating system. But as long as your camera app has access to the GPS signal, you can just go around and take pictures with your normal camera app and then use this Snap to Map to suck those pictures in and create a story map. So I'm going to click here on Create New Story Map, and I'm going to add a title, and I'll just say section of UNH, and the description, say here are a few places near. There are a few places near Redmond Hall. And again, you can choose one of the different options. Perhaps I'll choose the imagery this time. And when I'm done, I'll go ahead and click Next. Now, since I'm sitting in here at my desk, I'm not going to take pictures, but I'm going to choose from existing. And you could go through your camera roll and just take a whole bunch of different pictures. I chose instead to create an album. So I created an album called Campus. So I knew that all of the pictures inside of that campus album are the ones that I would like to add. By clicking on each of them, I select them. And when I've selected all the ones that I would like, I click on Done. So that's taken all of those pictures. So in this case, it was 6, and it's created the slides for those pictures. So if I click on Next, it's going to show me that I have these slides. Now, I could spend a lot of time right now and awkwardly type titles and descriptions here, but the beautiful thing about Snap to Map is that I could then work afterwards, once it's online, to edit these. So I don't necessarily have to do it on my phone. So you're going to have to make a choice as whether or not it's better to do things in the field as you're going along. In some cases, it very well may be. Or if you have these pictures and you just want to make a very quick story map, that you might edit or add this information after the fact on your computer, which is what we're going to do in this case. So since I've imported the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different images that I wanted, I'm going to click Done. And I'm going to click on Publish and Share. Notice that it mentions to me you're not going to be able to edit the story map from this device. And I say, sure. Go ahead and proceed. And it's bundling up those pictures, all the necessary data, and it's sending those up to ArcGIS Online using my login information. Now keep in mind that if you have a lot of pictures, this could take an awfully long time. I happen to be on the university Wi-Fi, so it's going fairly quickly. Once it's done, I'll go ahead and switch over to my ArcGIS Online account. And what you're going to see is that all this information has been moved up, and a new story map has been generated. So, any questions on any of that? Go ahead and go back to my ArcGIS Online account. Now, I'll reload this page. The new map should be there. So what you see is you have this feature layer, which is what it actually used to collect the data. You have the web map, which is the map that it used, and then that app, which is the story map. Now, if we go to My Stories and refresh the page, that story map does not show up. I think it's very interesting. I'm not quite sure why that is, but watch this. We go over to ArcGIS Online and we open up and view the story map. And I'm going to do any sort of editing, so we're going to switch to builder mode to add some information. So we'll just put this as mailbox, say even that. So I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to do one change and save it. So now that it's been saved in ArcGIS Online, if I go back here and reload the page, we'll see what happens. Yeah, for some reason, it needs that one single edit in ArcGIS Online in order for it to be seen here. So if you're in ArcGIS Online, it won't be a big deal if you're using that interface, but if you're using the My Stories interface, keep in mind that may be an issue. So now that we have it showed up in My Stories, we're going to go ahead and use it here. By clicking on it, you can do a variety of things. We can edit the story from here. It looked through to make sure everything that we had in there was set. Doesn't look like any problems. You can see that it puts snap to map here as the image, but of course that's not that interesting to people who might look at our map. So we're going to click choose thumbnail and choose something here. See which one we like best. Maybe we'll use this one. Notice you have the option to upload an image if you'd like instead. Just going to have right here, click save. So now that will be the image, the thumbnail that's shown with our map. And you can click View Story again, or you can click Edit Story to go back into the editing dialog. So you can, again, spend as much time as you want. You can change the settings as we did before. This integrated layout seems to be the one that people like better. And you can go ahead and change one at a time all of the information, one at a time for each picture. So I would say, generally speaking, if you're doing a few pictures and you're out in the field, or if there's things you want to remember in the field, you could write them down or type them in. It might be better to do them back in the office like this after the fact, or certainly you can correct them if you'd like. You could also bring in new pictures, add new pins, move pins around, and you can notice all of these had the same color pin, so you can change the color too. If we want this Rudman to be blue, I can go ahead and click on the blue. Maybe I want the steam pipe to be purple. I can click purple. And whenever you're done, you can click Save. Now, to get the link that you would share with other people, you can click on Share. Notice it says here the tour is shared publicly already, so you shouldn't have to change any settings for people to see it. But if you click on Share, it will give you a nice, short URL that you can copy and paste to people. And then that way, you won't have to give them the big, long, ugly URL, which is up here is the real URL of the map. So again, any questions? Oops, sorry. What did I click to get to builder mode? Oh, good question. Let me go back. Let me show you what it looks like. When you're in the map, there's several ways to get to builder mode. One, when you launch the map, so that if you use what they did to copy and paste or that short URL, there's a button right here that says switch to builder mode, because it knows that you have access to that. You're already logged in somewhere in that browser. And by clicking that switch to builder mode, it brings you back. If you are someplace else, so if you are over here in ArcGIS Online, you would click, see, view web mapping application, you click view application. And depending on how you have it set up, it'll launch you into builder mode, or again, that's the same button, switch to builder mode. And that'll get you back into here. All right, any other questions? So, snap to map, pretty exciting, very cool. You can be out in the field, taking pictures as you go along. You could type in a little bit of information if you want. And even before you get back to your desk, you can click that button to publish, and a story map will already exist. It'll be publicly shared that people could look at. Once you're back at your desk, you can do more, but you don't have to do everything at your desk. And there's something to me about, number one, being outside and having to take the pictures themselves. But there's something about, if you do put the names and the descriptions even if you need to make them longer, or you need to put links in, or you need to put references or something. Filling out that information in the field right when you're collecting it is a very valuable and powerful thing. Sometimes you take a bunch of pictures, you get back in your office, and you don't necessarily remember why you took the picture, or you don't remember specifically what was happening at that moment. But limitation, definitely, you do need to have an organizational account. And that may be expensive. You may already have one. It depends on the type of institution that you work in. And keep in mind that it's only to use this snap to map that you need the organizational account. Any story map, including this sort of story map, you can make on the computer with just a public account. So this is the last of this series of 4, which we're going through. Why would you use online maps to engage your audience? How do you use ArcGIS Online? How do you use story maps? And then how to use your phone to create a story map. There will be more webinars. I definitely will email folks when that information is available. I also, and you'll get an email from me, and my email will be up here at the end. If you have any ideas about the types of things you'd like to see, what the next step for any of these are, questions that you have as you try to go about using this mapping, we're definitely all ears, because we'd love to present any sort of webinar that would help people to be able to use this mapping to share information and to tell their story and engage people. So one last time here, if anybody has any questions, comments, ideas that you want to put out both for the crowd and or for me to respond to, I'll give you about a minute. And while I'm waiting here, as I said, this webinar will be recorded and made available probably in the next day or so, and you will get an email when it is available. Okay, it looks like there are no questions, which is fine. Thank you very much for joining us today. Any questions in the future, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me using that information there. Also, we have information about what work is going on in e-extension related to mapping and geospatial technologies, and we have links and information about what's happening here at UNH Cooperative Extension related to GIS and GPS. Thanks again.